I was inspired by my second cousin's Facebook cover with all of these pretty colorful pebbles. And I thought, that's really nice. I think I'd like to use that as a background for a web page project. Now, here's my web page project, and what I'm going to do is turn it into a digital notebook from, of course, a library book of programming. And all of the chapters that I'm going to take notes on are shown over here at the left in my scrolling navigation here. And when you click on your first chapter, you have a hover that turns black, so it makes it a little bit easier to read what the name of the chapter is, your first program. And then when you click it, you get this tint that shows through the background of the page. And each one of these has a color matched tint by using the paint's eyedropper. So here's like an orange from one of these orange rocks, and this one has like a pink, again from one of these rocks. All of these colors I got trying to color match any of these different colored pebbles so that there's a little bit of consistency with the theme of the web page. And I could take it all the way to the bottom. Again, each one of these is going to be notes for a different chapter. Then I created one additional page called Font Families. Now, the reason for this page is that when you design a web page, all browsers don't necessarily give you the font that you think you're going to get. They're pretty much similar, and there's something called Websafe fonts that you can look up. You can Google that so that you can be sure that you're using a font family that everybody's going to see. If you use a special font that you have to download to your own computer, chances are other people don't have that on theirs. So if you use something extra fancy that you download for yourself, you might want to include a link so that the user can download it as well, or download it and send it in the package if you're sharing your website with other people. There's also Google Fonts, and with Google Fonts you can you can use a link in your web design as well, and if they're online, it will grab the Google fonts that you use. So that's another way to get around the user not possibly having the font on their device. Now, these fonts I know work on my device. None of them are too exciting. They're basically quite plain, and probably every device has these, but I get to see at a glance what they'll look like on my system. Let's see. What am I? I think this is Google Chrome. I thought it was Firefox, but no, I'm looking at it through Google Chrome. Now here's an example. Through Google Chrome, number 16 on my list item here, this is what the font family Impact Regular looks like. It's very fat. Now if I take that same page here, my template, and run it in Firefox, you'll see that it doesn't have the same quality that Chrome displays it as. So go to Font Families, go down to 16. This is Impact Regular in Firefox. There it is in Firefox, there it is in Chrome. So they're slightly different. It's not a perfect world, but doing a page like this lets you see at a glance what other people may see. Alright, so basically another point I had is in Firefox, if you try to use Webdings Regular or Wingdings Regular, you're not seeing the symbols. But if you look in Chrome and you go to the Webdings or Wingdings, you do see the symbols. So it's just something to be aware of when you're designing your web pages. Alright, now let's get back to my first page. This is my first chapter. By clicking this navigation link, it's opening a separate web page that is named 1.html. And if I go into my folder here, template.html is my landing page. I've got another folder called box, various folders to hold audio, images, pages, and then I should have created folders for my JavaScripts or my CSS, but I didn't because I don't have multiples. If I have multiple JavaScripts and multiple CSS style sheets, then I'll create folders and change my paths to point to them, but right now I don't. But going in my pages, See, here are all the web pages that are going to open up in my iframe. And here's the font family page that I created. This is what it looks like before you open it up in the iframe in the landing page. And this is what 1.html looks like before you open it up in the iframe in the landing page. So here you see the background is white. Well, the background actually is a fixed image of the pebbles, but the each header is using the background image, so it's pretty neat when you do this scroll how you get this effect of looking through little holes in the page to see what's on the other side. It's a nice little effect. Down here I've created a footer, just has my name, the copyright symbol, and the date, and a little icon that I created. All right, as a logo. I want to quickly move on to the code now, but I want this to be side by side so I can show you the code and explain it as I go through. All right. Before I go to the landing page, I guess I'll go through this because it's rather simple. So my 1.html, you see I have everything closed, so I'm only going to open it up bit by bit, and you will need to pause the video to copy the code because I want this video to be quicker than normal. So I'm going to open up the head right now. Inside of the head, each individual chapter's web page, 1.html, 2.html, so on and so forth, is going to have its own personal set of styles in the style tags in the head because I want each chapter to look a little bit differently. So I'm going to change my style for every page. For this particular page, in between the curly braces, that's all the style that I have for my body. I gave it a padding. Then I have a horizontal rule, which, did I use a horizontal rule? Yes, I did. It's right here. You can barely see it. It's a thin line. There's my styles for the horizontal rule. Again, every time you see me click and you see my curly braces turn orange, be prepared to stop the video and copy this down. There's the body. There's the horizontal rule. Here's some styles for the image. And just to let you know, I am using this in a lot of styles. It's 3 different statements that give me a shadow. And they're 3 different statements to make sure that 3 types of browsers get the shadow effect. So here's one statement, box shadow. Here's another statement, Moz box shadow. And here's the third statement, WebKit box shadow. All of these statements do the exact same thing. They're just making sure that if you open it in Chrome, you open it in Firefox, you open it up in Safari, you open it up in Opera, that you will get your shadow. So this is copied and pasted all over the place in my code, just to let you know. This, anytime you see a Z in front of anything, it's not being executed, but it's code that I might want to use in the future. So I just misspell it, but it's not doing a single thing. That's my way of having the code for future reference, but not using it in this particular situation. Again, every single piece of code ends with the semicolon. So if some lines of code are longer, like this one, all of this is one line. I just ran out of room. If I open this up, you can see, depending on the width of the window. So make sure when you're typing your code you don't make any mistakes and put a semicolon here because this is not the end of the statement. This is the end of the statement. So be careful when you copy. All right, that's everything for the image. All right, moving on down. For my H1 tag, there's everything that is involved with the H1 tag. That's how I get the header to look like this with the ability to see an image in the background. The fact that we have it fixed gives us the illusion, as you move, as you scroll, you get to see all parts of the background, not just a little piece of it that moves with the header. The background is fixed, it doesn't move with the header. It's a nice effect. And this spacing doesn't matter so much as long as you have the statement correct. So there's everything for the H1. Moving on, we're going to look at the styles for the paragraph tag. There's the styles for the paragraph tag. And here's the styles for the div with the ID set to foot. And again, my foot is this section right here. It's got a rectangle here with a single curved corner. And if you just want one of your corners curved, where is the code that did that? Right here. This is how you do it. You specify border, dash top, dash left, dash radius, and then you can do 10 pixels, 20 pixels, 30, 40, up to 50 pixels. If you try to do 60 pixels or 70 pixels, this is a radius and it won't do anything different. 50 pixels is the highest you can go. Alright, so there's everything for our foot div down here. Now I have something called foot span, and I put this stuff in a span tag in case I wanted to stylize it specifically. All of this stuff is stylized specifically because I put it in a paragraph tag and gave a style to the p tag. But if I want to do the same thing, I put this in a span tag. I could have put it in a paragraph tag, but since this is different than this, I didn't want it to take the same styles. Now here I have two different text shadows. The first text shadow has these settings, and pound 000000 is the same thing as saying black. This is just showing you the numeric version, and this is just showing you the name version. Text shadow that is not Z'd out is what you currently see. This is what that looks like. If I Z this out, now there's no text shadow. Watch when I hit refresh how this changes slightly. There it is with no text shadow. So using a text shadow gives a little more emphasis, so it's kind of nice to use. Now let me show you what the top text shadows configuration looks like. Save it here. So that kind of shows you what happens when you change these numbers. So experiment with your text shadow by changing these numbers. Experiment by changing what color you're using as a shadow. Black obviously is what most people would use, but if you wanted to use a different text shadow like red or whatever color, you could. So that's just something that I wanted you to experiment with. I don't particularly like this text shadow, so I'm going to Z that out, and I'm going to take this Z off of here because this is the one I think looks the best. It's crisper. It's got a shadow, but it's not an obvious shadow. It basically makes the text pop a little better. Alright, so that's everything in the style for my 1.html web page. With that being said, let me close the style tags up. And with that being said, the head is completely finished, so let me close the head tag. Let's look at the body tag. Now this is so much copy and paste for this because you can see the repetitive pattern here. All we have is a header with a paragraph. So from here to here, all of this is just copied and pasted. So let's look at, here's the opening body tag, opening closing H1 tag. This is my first topic of the chapter, and you can see that right here. This is my first topic of the chapter. After that we have opening closing paragraph tag and a bunch of mumbo jumbo filler text. And that's this. You take this and this, copy and paste it over and over again for an estimation of how many things you might use in the course of your text digital notebook. If you need to copy and paste more, you can, but this just gets you started. Here, this is the exact same thing. I've just closed it. And really, that's all my page consists of. Headers and paragraphs. Down here at the bottom, we've got that my footer. But before we get to my footer, I have the HR tag. That's my horizontal rule. That's this very thin line that you see right here before you see the foot. Let's open the foot. Div ID equals foot. Inside of the foot, I have an image, which I created a logo. I have a break tag, and then I have span tags. That's all that's in the foot. Image source equals, and this is my path to the logo that I created. Now I'm currently 1.html. Let's see where 1.html resides. It resides in this folder called pages. So I have to jump out of this folder in order to, because I'm going to go from the pages folder to the images folder. So 1.html is in pages. I have to jump out of it, and that's what the dot does. It jumps out of the current folder. So I jump out of pages, and where do I want to go? I want to go into images. So /images is jumping into that folder. When I jump into the images folder, I don't have any more folders to jump into, so I just want to point to whatever image I want to point to. And in this case, I used the logo gray name. I gave it a background color here of gray. That's why I called it logo gray.bmp. So the / is basically pointing to that. Now you will have a different configuration on your computer. You're going to have folders with your own images. So you just want to make sure whatever you name your folder, if you do the exact setup I have, you have to make sure you have the name of whatever your picture is. The break tag after the image forces my span to go down a line. If I don't have this break tag, take it off, save and refresh, you can see that this starts right in the same line that my logo is. And that may be how you want to run your footer, like that. You might want to do it that way. So if that's what you want, then don't put the break tag there. I wanted mine to go down to the next line, so I put a break tag. In between the span tags, I have my name, this right here, this code, the and symbol copy and the semicolon gives me the copyright symbol. Alright, so there's the end of the foot with the ID of div, the end of the body tag, and the end of the HTML. So that's my whole scenario for what I'm going to do with chapter 1. When I get to my notes, I will just put what this note refers to, and I will replace all this blah 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 with my actual notes. Alright, so we're done with 1.html. Get rid of those. Let's look at the CSS that stylizes the landing page that I've named template.html. Alright, I'm going to do the same thing with all the rest of the code, in that I don't want to read all of it. I just want you to pause the video. So here are the styles for the body for the landing page. Everything in there. Okay, now that you've when you've finished that, we're going to move on to the iframe. Here's everything for the iframe. Next, moving on, we're going to go to the ID, the div with the ID content. Okay. And this is just a little note about when you're using box shadow, what each thing in between the commas means. So this is the first thing, comma. Let's do this. In between the commas. This is what it means, what the numbers mean. So when you're using box shadow, the first thing would be the horizontal offset. The number, if the number is positive, you're going to get a horizontal shadow to the right. If you use a negative number, you're going to get a horizontal shadow to the left. Then there's a comma, and the next number is going to be about the vertical offset. So the shadow is going to be above your text or above your element or below your element. And again, you could use positive or negative numbers depending if you want the shadow to go above or below whatever it is that you're shadowing. After the next comma, the next number is going to indicate the blur radius. If you want a sharp blur, you would use 0. And if you want a more blurry blur, you would use a higher number. So 0 for sharp, higher number, more blur. Then you put a comma, and the last number that you can use would be the spread radius. The positive number increases the size of the spread of the shadow. A lower number decreases the size of the spread of the shadow. The default is 0. And if you don't use 4 different numbers when you are creating a box shadow, you won't be using all of these. The horizontal offset, followed by a vertical offset, followed by a blur radius, followed by which the blur radius is either sharp or faded, and then the spread. How far do you want your shadow to spread? All right, enough of that. Now let's look at the styles for the div of nav, all of the list items inside of that. That's what this refers to. All the list items, which these are all list items. Well, it's a combination of list items and anchor tags. They're put together. These are all the styles for that. Again, here's that box shadow 3-statement thing that I've been copying and pasting all over the place. All right, once you finish with the list items that are inside the div with the ID of nav, you finish that, we get down to our anchor links right here. The anchor links just have text decoration set to none, which means you don't see lines here. Your anchor links normally have lines to let the user know, hey, there's a link. I can click on it and something will happen. I'll go somewhere. I'll do something. In this case, we took that off. Only have 2 styles for spans. Our ordered list, we only have 3 styles. And for the hover event of the list item inside of the div with the ID of nav, we only have the style background color black. So that's what happens. That's what makes this happen. Now, when you hover over the link list items that you've created that haven't been seen yet, these work. But this down here we've already clicked, and so hovering on that does nothing. It's only going to work for the pages you haven't opened yet. Now there's 4 states to anchor tags. There's the link in general before you touch it. There's the visited, which like here you could tell this has been visited. There's the hover, which I've actually hovered over my list item instead of my link. And then there's active, which means when you're in the process of pushing your button down but haven't released it yet. I don't actually see any of these being black. I have them set differently, but if you want to use these, you can. It looks like my other styles have superseded this. But if you do stylize your links, your A links, and you don't have it incorporated with list item like I did, then this is the order that you want to do. First link, then visited, then hovered, then active. Moving on, for the div with the idea of nav, which we did the list item inside of the idea of nav. This is just the div itself with the idea of nav. That's this whole long rectangle that you can scroll. Quite a few things going on with that. For one, you see the background, the pebbles, right? This is what allows us for any element, whether it's a header, a paragraph, your body, a div with a specific ID, any element that you want to be able to see through and see an image behind it, this is how you do it. From here to here and everything in between. Now here, in the same manner that Box Shadow had different statements to cover different browsers that you might be using, we have 4 different things that deal with background being covering the whole element. You've got background size cover, O background size cover, Moz background size cover, and WebKit background size cover. These are all they all do the same thing, but you just want to make sure that all browsers will do the same thing. And this background is set to a path to whatever picture you want it. No repeat, center fixed. Now if I took this fixed off by misspelling it, let's see what happens. Well, it didn't do anything. Maybe because I used this cover. Maybe that's why. I thought I would see it scroll, but anyway. That's everything for the navigation element. Moving on down to our audio. These are the styles for the audio. No, I had originally set opacity so that you could see through this, but I thought it was overkill. You know, it's like, okay, if you make everything transparent, then it takes away the effect. Anytime you have an effect and you OD on it, it takes away the magic of the effect because it's just too much. And I can show you by spelling it properly what I meant. It's not bad because the opacity is set to 0.5, and when you do opacity, you have to have a number between 0 and 1. But, you know, I don't know. I didn't really care for it. If you set opacity to 0, it would be completely transparent. And so being completely transparent, you can't even see the controls. 0.3 is close to completely transparent, but you still see the controls a little bit. 0.9 is hardly see-through at all. Yeah, you really can't see. 0.5 is in between transparent and opaque. So you start off there and then make the decision of how much more clear do you want to be or how much more opaque do you want to be. Or misspell it and don't use it at all, but keep it there for future reference. Alright, so that's everything for the audio. Now remember I told you I have 2 images here, one on top of the other. I think I told you. Those 2 images have an ID of my image 1 and my image 2. And they both share all of these styles. They all get that box shadow thing. They all have a position fixed. They all are set to the same place because it's a picture on top of a picture, so you don't want to see any overlap. Unless you do want to see the overlap, but I didn't want to in this case, so I set both of them to the exact same bottom right width and height. The only thing that's different is they do not share the same z-index. If they did, which one would be the top and which one would be the bottom? So you have to have different z-indexes, and one has an opacity set to almost completely transparent so you can see through it, and the other doesn't. So even though both of these are set to share all of these, we're going to give my image 2 a unique set of styles that will be different. So finish up the styles that my image 1 and my image 2 share. And after that, let's take a look at the my image 2 styles that it has all to itself. My image 2 has a z-index of 1 and an opacity of 1. So it doesn't have any transparency to it at all, and it will be on the bottom. It happens to have a border of 15 pixels black ridge. The top picture has a border of 15 pixels white ridge. If you have something white transparent over something black, your ending result is something in this gray color. Alright, so that's all the styles for our landing page that's called template.html. I can get out of this now. We're completely done with the code here. Okay. Normally I do my JavaScript last, but I think I'm going to do it now. The JavaScript is what gives us some action to our page. And really the only action that I've got going on here, the function is called daily news. The only thing that's news about the day is what day is it? And as you can see in this overlay, it says Wednesday. So based on this JavaScript, a different overlay is going to appear. It happens to be Wednesday. Tomorrow when I open this page, it will say Thursday. The JavaScript will do it for me. It's automation. Now this is used from a previous project, and again, every time you see me use a z in front of a variable, it means it's not being used in this particular situation. So I either z out variables, I z out commands, and I use my comment to make it green. So in this particular project, the only variables we're using are these: var day, comma picture 1, comma picture 2. You don't even have to add this other stuff. You can just ignore it. But make sure that you end your statement with the semicolon. So do var day, comma picture 1, comma picture 2, no comma, and the semicolon. Those are global variables that are created outside of a function. So if I create another external JavaScript, I can use these variables in a totally different external JavaScript file. Let's look at our function called daily news, which I did put on the template's body on load event. So as soon as you open the page, it will automatically call daily news so that we know which overlay to have over here in the bottom. Now this uses a switch statement. After the switch statement, we use these two statements. We use this one, document.getElementById, parentheses and quotes myImage1 dot source equals picture1, and document.getElementById, parentheses quotes myImage2 dot source equals picture2. Based on the switch statement, whatever happens with the switch statement will determine which pictures you see down here. Every day of the week I have the same background image of me at the bottom, but I can change that as well. I don't have to have this same image. I can have a Monday image, a Tuesday image, different pictures of me or my family or some tree or bug I took a picture of or whatever random thing. And so therefore it's dynamic. It's changeable. I don't have to keep that. It's the same. Now let's see what makes it dynamic. What makes it changeable? That's the key to the magic is in the switch statement. Switch. What are we switching? What are we going to do? Well, when you use a switch statement, what's in the parentheses is some type of evaluation statement. The evaluation in this particular instance is new date parentheses dot get day parentheses. The browser knows how to evaluate that expression. If I had instead 1 plus 2, well, you know what 1 plus 2 is. You don't have to have a calculator for that. That evaluates to 3. So if the value was 3, because we had switch 1 plus 2 in here, then we get down to the case looking for a match. Case 0, that's not a match. Case 1, that's not a match. Case 2, that's not a match. But since I told you 1 plus 2 equals 3, case 3 is a match. So in that case, everything under case 3 would execute. This is how the switch case works. The variable day would be set to Wednesday. The picture 1 would be set to this path. You go into the folder called box, then you go into another folder called images, and you point to wednesday.png. Picture 2 variable is going to be set to this path. You go into a folder called box, and then you go into another folder called images, and you point to me.jpg. These two are commented out because I'm not using them in this project, but they're commented out in case I want to use it with another project. The break statement means we're breaking out of this whole switch case scenario. In all of these cases, we want one and only one thing to be true. Now going back to not 1 plus 2 is 3, but when you use this expression, new date dot get day, the browser knows what that means, and it gives an output from 0 to 6. Days get a value of 0 to 6. If it were 0, that means Sunday, so you would create your code accordingly. So the variable day is going to be set to the string Sunday. Picture 1 is going to be set to box/images/sunday.ping. Picture 2 variable is going to be set to this path, box/images/me.jpg. And then it's going to break out, and then you're done with the switch statement. When you're done with your switch statement, you found the case that matches the expression. You do it, you set the variables to values, you break out of it, and breaking out of it takes us, here's the end of the switch statement, it takes us out of this whole switch scenario, and it starts the very next line of code. The very next line of code we have is document.getElementById parentheses a and quotes myimage1 dot source equals picture 1. So we set a value to picture 1, and then we took that value and we're going to stick it in this area right here for picture 1. We're going to do the same thing here, document.getElementById parentheses and quotes myimage2 dot source equals picture 2. Again, today's Wednesday, so this statement, new date dot get day, evaluates to a 3. Case 0 doesn't match, it's ignored. Case 1 doesn't match, it's ignored. Case 2 doesn't match, it's ignored. Case 3, this will be a match to today's this. This is a match. So the variable day is set to the string Wednesday. Picture 1 is set to this image path. Picture 2 is set to this image path. Then we break out of the switch, which takes us all the way down to here. We break out of it. We go to document.getElementById myimage1.source equals picture 1. Document.getElementById myimage2.source equals picture 2. And it's a very simple JavaScript function. Switch case statements are great. They're easy to understand. They're easier to understand than loops. And that's it for the action.js JavaScript file. Now let's look at the template.html. This is our landing page. This is going to show us how we make our audio player up here. It's going to show us how we make our whole navigation here. And it's going to show us, let me open this up. It's going to show us our iframe right here, that every time you click a different navigation area, it's going to open up a different web page, and it's going to show you how I have these two images that are on top of each other. It's going to show you all that. You always start off with your main page having a doc type declaration. On these external web pages, this one and then all of the other ones that open up in here, there are some things you don't need because you're not going to see it. The page opens up inside of the iframe, so things like title and image icons, you're not going to ever see those, so you don't need to add them. Here's our opening HTML tag that nests everything. And then you've got a head, you've got a body. Inside of the body you have a div that has the ID of wrap. So the head and the body are always part of the HTML. The body has an onload event that calls the daily news JavaScript function that I showed you, which will make sure I have the appropriate pictures that I want seen every day that you open this. If it's Sunday, a different set of pictures will open. Let's look inside of the head. Now everything in the head goes from line 3 to line 17. Not a whole lot going on here. Again, this is a landing page, so there are things that we want to make sure we have in here. We've got a title. So in between the opening and closing title tags, I just have template, but I should call it something different at this point. I'm going to call it Pebbles Digital Notebook. Pebbles Digital Notebook. Save this and you'll see it change up here. Pebbles Digital Notebook. Meta chart set equals UTF-8. That's one section. Another section is meta name equals viewport, content equals width equals device width, comma initial scale equals 1.0. Here's the link for the little icon if you want one in your browser tab. Link rel equals icon href equals, and now you have to point to the icon, and you do have to create it in a 50 by 50 pixel size. You start off by creating it as a bitmap file. After you create your bitmap image in a 50 by 50, then you just rename it with .ico instead of bitmap. And there you'll have an ico file. Here our link is pointing to our external style sheet, and as you can see, the path is going in the box folder and pointing to style.css. This right here is pointing to our external JavaScript, and again the path in my particular instance is I go inside a folder called box and I point right to action.js. That's the whole thing in the head. So we're done with the head. Let's close it up. Now let's check out our body. Inside of our body, again pointing to the daily news function so that it runs right away, we have a div with the ID of wrap. The wrap div wraps everything that you see here. It's going to wrap the audio tag, it's going to wrap the navigation, it's going to wrap the iframe. So let's open up wrap. Wrap goes from line 21 to line 148. No, I'm sorry, to line 153, which completes the entire web page, because then you have your ending body, ending HTML. Inside of the wrap here is our audio player. That's how you make an audio player. If you want your audio to automatically start playing, you use autoplay. I don't, so I z'd it out. If you want the audio to loop, you use the loop keyword. So controls lets the user see the controls. Autoplay means it'll automatically play a particular MP3 or OGG file, and loop means it'll keep going all day long. Don't really know if you want that feature or not, so I don't want it in mine, so I'm going to Z it out. The source tag inside of the audio player is set to nothing right now because the rest of our page will determine what's going to play up here. So we don't want you to open this up and something automatically start reading. We want you to click one of these first and then allow the audio to play. That's why it's set to nothing. There's the end of the audio tag. So that's how you make an audio player. Here's the two images I was talking about. One's right on top of the other based on the CSS positioning. Image ID equals my image 1. Source equals nothing, empty string. And image ID equals my image 2. And again, source equals nothing. It's an empty string. Because we want JavaScript to decide what images are going to go in here based on its little expression looking for the day of the week. So there's the two images. Now here's the nav. That's the section over here to the left that holds these list items and anchor tags. Let's look at the nav. Div ID equals nav. Let's not look at this anymore. Div ID nav is what we're going to look at. That goes from line 30, and the nav has got a lot of elements. It goes all the way to line 146. And this won't take long because I'm not going to read every single one of these. I'm just going to show you how to do the first two and copy and paste to make all the rest of them. We're using an OL tag, but I set it so that you don't see the numbers. So it didn't really matter if I used an OL tag or a UL tag because we're not looking at numbers or discs or squares or Roman numerals at all. Now this is your anchor opening tag and anchor closing tag. That's your link. So from here to here, this is the opening link tag. It points to the external HTML page. So you go inside box and then you go inside pages and then you point to one.html. Target equals content because we are targeting that one.html page to an iframe that has the name of content. The onClick event is going to play the audio we want. Document.getElementById, parentheses, and quotes player, because we gave our ID, our audio an ID of player, dot source equals, and here's the path. Here's the path to the OGG file. Again, using MP3 files might be better. OGGs are just a smaller file type. You go inside box, you go inside audio, and you point to one.ogg. So that's the opening link tag. After the opening link tag that is going to point to one.html web page and point to a certain video file, you have this opening list item tag. The list item tag has an onClick event that changes the color when you click on it. So the onClick event is set to this.style.background color equals, and I used an RGBA color scheme. The R stands for red, green, B is for blue, so red, green, blue, and A is alpha channel. So for the red, we gave it a number of 236, comma, the green gets a number of 146, comma, the blue gets a number of 36, comma, and the alpha channel gets 0.5. So it is halfway between transparent and opaque. That gives me a click event to my list item that gives me this tint. That's how you do that. Now, I set a title to none. The reason being, if I want to use a title, the title to this chapter is your first program. You see it on this list element, this list item. But if you set your web page to be so flexible that this part starts to cover up this part, you might have wanted to put a title, your first program. so that when the user hovers over something they can't read, they'll get that little tip, your first program. Now, I wound up starting off this so that this was flexible, and what was happening was, oops, oh my God, give me a break. What was happening was, as I made this page smaller and smaller, this content area started to smush this. Well, I've since changed my mind and didn't want that to be, so I set these to my nav to a specific static width. So now I no longer have that problem. But if you ever have anything that gets covered up and you want the element to have a tooltip, a pop-up like that, all you have to do is set a title to it. And even though you can't see what it is, the tooltip will let you know what it is. And the tooltip can say anything you want. You can play a funny little game and make a web page and tell your best friend or your someone you're playing a trick on, just hover around to different elements, and then you can have all kind of silly messages that pop up for every single element. You know, you could do that if you want. But I don't need to do that now because my list item doesn't get squished, and you always get to read what it says on the list item. But that's how you would do it if you needed to. All right, so there's the opening list item tag, and what you see on the face is right here, whatever you type there, your first program. Ending list item tag, ending anchor tag. So this is copied and pasted for every single one of these things that you want in your navigation. So basically copy and paste it, and if you want to give yourself a comment like this that just says next, this doesn't execute, this is just a comment, so that you can see everywhere the next one is. All of this is a copy and paste. All of this is a copy and paste. And everywhere you see this, it's the same deal. All the way to the end of the nav. Here's the last one. This one is for this. The opening aref equals box / pages / font family.html, target equals content, on click equals document element by ID, parentheses quotes player dot source equals box / audio / 16.ogg. I don't have a 16.ogg, but if I create an audio file, whether it's OGG or MP3, by clicking this, the user can click this and listen to whatever I will have to say about this page. li on click equals this dot style dot background color equals, and you could put red, green, blue, whatever, or you can use the RGBA, which gives you an alpha channel so that you have some transparency involved. Font families, ending li tag. So this is the very last link list item. After that, we have our closing OL tag, our closing div tag that closes the nav. So we've looked at everything in the nav. So let's close it. Close the div equals nav. Now let's look at the div ID equals content. That's going to show us this side of the page. We've seen the audio player, we've seen the nav. Now let's look at the content, the main deal. Div ID equals content. It's pretty small. It goes from here to here. It's pretty small because all it has in it is an iframe. Here's the opening iframe tag. Iframe name equals content, source equals box / pages / one.html. Scrolling equals auto, and frame border equals 0. Here's the ending iframe tag. Notice there's nothing. There's no words, there's no images, there's nothing between the opening iframe tag and the closing iframe tag. There's the end of the div for the ID set to content. And there's the end of the div with the ID of wrap, the ending body tag, the ending HTML. So I went over all of the code that creates this. It's a very simple experience to practice web page design. I've showed you a little about CSS. I've showed you a little bit about making a landing page. I showed you about opacity. So you can have a transparency. I showed you about how to make a background image. I showed you how to use a little JavaScript so that you can have something different pop up on your page based on the day of the week. You can take that a step further and find out how you can alter that JavaScript so depending on a certain holiday, a certain day of the year, you might have a happy birthday page for someone's birthday. You might have a Christmas background, Halloween background, you name it. You can use that JavaScript to tailor this in any way, shape, or form that you like. And again, I'm using audio and images, but it would be interesting to have a different background video based on a certain event. And I have done that, and I can show that in another video. I'm not sure if I'm finished with that project yet or not, but when I complete that, I'll set a video so that you can play with that as well. Have a great day, everybody.